Let's go. Yeah! Hey. All right. I'm excited to be here today with my new friend, Trey Xavier. So Trey is passionate about helping musicians craft better songs. He has over 28 years of experience, over 242,000 YouTube subscribers, sharing expert insights. He's a Berkeley-trained songwriter-guitarist with a music composition degree, combining academic depth with real-world experience. He's an active musician with solo projects in a band, and he blends teaching and performance together to help inspire the next generation of creators. And I'm really excited to connect with him today to talk a little bit about probably the most important thing about being an artist or being a musician, which is songwriting and learning how to express yourself and share songs that resonate with not just you, but also with a wider audience. So, Trey, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Hell yeah. Thanks for having me on. I love hearing the summing up of my life in a short little snippet like that, because I'm like, wow, that makes me sound really cool. And like, I've done a lot of things. I'm like, oh yeah.
Mom, Dad, hold on. Like, come join the phone call. Listen to this.
The little man in the square box said I'm not a failure.
Still a lot of time left to live, Trey. There's still time to throw it all away.
Yes, I can't wait. There's so much room under so many bridges for me to bring my 30 guitars and construct a shelter out of them.
I gotta say, Trey, it's been a lot of fun already. Like backstage, we've just been like goofing around, and we've entered some territories of conversation that it's very rare that I'll talk about in like that short of time. So I'm guessing this is gonna be a fun conversation. So, Trey, maybe just for anyone that this is their first time connecting with you, could you share a quick introduction into your story and how you grew to close to 300,000 subscribers now, and what's kind of like the main mission or problem that you're here to solve?
So I didn't set out to be a YouTuber. Of course, at the time, it was only sort of starting to be a career choice at all. I kind of came into it sideways. I had quit the music store. I was teaching guitar at a school. And I don't know. I just responded to an ad on Metal Sucks looking for a writer for a website that they were starting called Gear Gods. And I was like, I know a pretty good bit about music gear, and I know what bands are playing what stuff.
I could be a god of the gear.
I could be a god. If someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes. I don't know many things, but that I know. And that was like the first step into the rest of my life, more or less, because I got hired as a like additional writer. I was applying to be editor-in-chief. They hired somebody else to do it. And then they hired me for like, they paid me $100 a month to write one post a week because they liked me. Because they were like, well, you're obviously the only other possible choice for this. And they were just starting. It was brand new. It didn't exist. We were defining what it was. And then I just stuck around, did more work than they were paying me for. And I was like, hey, this like YouTube thing, that could be good for us, right? And they were like, yeah, I guess so. I don't know. And so I started the YouTube channel. Like I signed us up with an email address and all that, literally from scratch, made a bunch of garbage videos and uploaded them. And then I saw that people were doing like gear reviews. I was like, I could do a gear review. Like I borrowed a guitar from a student of mine to do I had to borrow a camera. It was primitive times, bro. But I had a lot of fun. Like it combined a lot of things that I like and that I'm good at. And I figured that out pretty quick and I was hooked. So I started just more or less doing whatever I wanted on the YouTube channel. And then it sort of took off a bit. And it was like, oh, I guess this is kind of the thing. Like we started making more money doing YouTube stuff than on the website. And we so eventually it got to the point where it grew to a level where I started going, well, I don't know how good I feel about being an employee anymore. Like I was still just a hired gun, more or less, in spite of the fact that I was doing everything. I in the interim also became editor-in-chief. The other guy left, and I was the only possible choice. Right? So at a certain point, I was like, all right, I am building this empire, but I am not the emperor. And there's no reason that I shouldn't be. So I actually, sometime during 2020, actually it was at NAMM 2020, I made a proposal to my bosses and I bought the whole property, basically. I bought Gear Gods, the website, the YouTube channel, all of the
Let's go. That's awesome, man.
It was either that or I was gonna quit and go solo, more or less. That's been my life since. Like that. So that from the part of the story that's relevant to what we've got here. I mean, the rest of it, if you want to know my life story, it's not really that interesting. I started playing guitar at 12. It's not that interesting, but I'll tell you anyways. I'll summarize it real quick. Started playing guitar at 12. Didn't really take it all that seriously until I actually originally wanted to be more like an actor. And then I got just completely hooked on music. And I went to Berkeley because, because I was from Boston. So it was a hop, skip, and a jump. But also because John Petrucci went there and Dream Theater. And I was a Dream Theater stan. I mean, it's kind of still am. But, I wanted to learn everything that I possibly could about how music was constructed and formed so that I could do it better. I didn't care about getting a degree or being academic about it in that sense. I just wanted to learn more stuff. I remember actually bugging my guitar teacher and actually my cello teacher. So for a while, I actually started on the cello, but never really got anywhere with it, but for some reason played it through 9th grade. And I would like bug my cello teacher about music theory. I'd be like, can you teach me something like music theory? And this poor guy, like just like a amazing musician, right? Like incredible cello player, just played in a symphony or whatever. Didn't really know much in the way of theory. Like could play anything off the page, like with feeling and all kinds of stuff. And, but he was like, sorry, I don't know. Like, I'm here to show you how to play the thing so that you can get up on stage and do it. And that was kind of when I realized like, oh, like I want to go a lot deeper. I don't want to just know technique. I want to see what the bricks are that are holding this house up. So I just followed that down the rabbit hole and learned as much as I could, went to school for it. The like classes I took were all a mishmash because I was just like, I want to learn about this. I want to learn about this. It wasn't like a program, like I studied jazz for years. I did jazz harmony and I took ear training and just whatever I thought was going to help me increase the richness of whatever music I wanted to make. And actually, it's been sort of a theme throughout my life that I like to increase the flexibility of whatever it is that I'm doing or creating. Like, I want to be able to do whatever I want to do with no limitations, which actually is sort of the antithesis of creativity in a way, because you can't be creative without limitations. That's literally what it is. So I think I inherently fight, and the more knowledge you have, the fewer limitations you have. Little contradictory in a sense, but nonetheless, here we are. I've built a level of knowledge about music and songwriting and composition that I'm actually like fairly happy with. And I have a ton of fun making music now. Like I've gotten to a point where I'm like always having a great time creating music. So that's pretty good. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that's kind of an important part of it, right? Awesome. Man, well, that's really cool. I mean, it's a very interesting background and kind of perspective. And it sounds like even like when you were at school, you put together all these different pieces that really kind of gave you that foundation or flexibility to express yourself in a lot of different avenues. One question that came up for me just as you were sharing your story of, especially as it relates to that early stage when you were just building this early seed of this YouTube channel. you had this idea, and back then, especially, like YouTube, probably wasn't really what it is now. And the idea of being a YouTuber probably didn't even really exist. And yeah, I'm fascinated with kind of that stage of creativity where, yeah, I'm just curious to hear like your mindset, like, because clearly now like is evolved and blossomed into such a, a beautiful community and thing that you've built. But it's so easy to overlook that initial like seedling that you kind of planted and kind of where you were at that point. And I think a lot of people listening to this or watching this, they might feel discouraged because they're kind of in that initial stage of their life or their career, and they don't have 300,000 subscribers, and they want to have more of this validation, but they don't have it yet. And so I'm just kind of curious to hear what was your mindset at that point, and maybe what would your advice be for someone who's watching this right now that has big goals or dreams, but they're kind of in that stage and they're kind of wondering what they should be doing in order to move their career forward.
Well, I'm sort of two minds about it, because if you were to follow the same mindset that I had at the time, it's not really conducive to success because it was a disaster. I had no strategy plan, no consistency, partly because just of indecisiveness in a sense. I mean, I was within a sort of framework because, like I said, at the time, it wasn't really mine. It was a little freeing in the sense that, like, I was getting paid one way or the other. I wasn't depending on the income from YouTube. So it was a little bit more of a free for all. Like, I could try a bunch of different stuff and I wasn't going to not eat if something didn't pop off. I think with even a modicum more strategy than I had at the time will benefit you greatly. Not just YouTube, but over the whole of social media and your career, doing whatever it is that you're trying to do, music or any kind of content creation. And that's to have consistency across the entirety of what you do. And at the time I was sort of creating the via trial and error sort of, I don't want to say persona because that makes it seem like it's constructed. It's not really like that, but the essence of what it is that I would do on the internet. And I did that by just doing my own take on things that I saw. You take a look, like I would see other people like my buddy Fluff doing gear reviews. I didn't know him at the time, but, or like Ole England. I'd be like, cool, how are they doing it? I'm going to do some more or less the same thing, but what's the Trey version? Like, what is it? And I think that's one really good way to do it, because you just like when you're learning music or whatever, you become you start off as a clone of your favorite musician, whatever, like, and then after a while, you've gained a bunch of skills and stuff, and then you go, oh, okay, well, what am I going to do? That's me. What am I going to do to actually make art that isn't just covers, more or less? So I would say that I wouldn't imitate what I did on YouTube, because in terms of the having success, putting up big numbers and all that, what you want to do is narrow the focus of what you do rather than broaden it. What I've done on YouTube is very, very broad. And basically like 3 years ago. What year is it now?
2092. I don't know.
1975 and just a brain floating in a jar. I completely shifted the focus of what I did on the channel entirely, which is also not really like recommended. So like if I was starting the channel today, I would not do gear reviews. I would be doing songwriting and music making content, which is something that I always put into everything. Even a gear review, I would make a demo. I would maybe write an original song or at least record one with the piece of gear. And that was the part that I liked and that I actually cared about. And now that's all I do. And the gear is, more like they've sort of switched roles, right? Like previously it was gear review plus like I'm showing you a little bit of how to use the gear to make music. Now I'm showing you how to make music and the gear is like there figure out what it is that you actually want to do. Think of it like it's what you're going to have to do for the rest of your life, more or less. Okay. Do you want to do original music? Don't try to do something else and then sort of slide it in sideways. Do original music over and over again. Do just that. Make it incrementally better. Think about iteration, right? You make something, the next time you do it, you just fix the things that didn't go right the first time. You're refining it. And don't try to do everything. Don't try to do almost anything else except for this one particular thing. I always use the example because it is so pure of the hydraulic press channels that all they do is put stuff into a hydraulic press and squish the crap out of it. Like if you're like, I want to see something get crushed, I want to know what's inside, a grandfather clock. You go to a hydraulic press channel, that's all they're going to have. If you went there and they were like, and they, did a meme review or a get ready with me or what, I don't know, what the hell else do people do? Or like they did a video comparing different, even if they did a review of different hydraulic presses, you wouldn't watch it. So now imagine what your channel is, what it looks like when someone comes to visit it, right? Are you like putting up a united front of stuff that's yours and that's you, and it's okay to be a bit repetitive. It's fine. It's not about people's expectations necessarily. That's something that you have to take into account, but also you might think that like looking at big channels or something that people will just go and watch whatever person X is doing. And some people get away with that, like if you're a personality-based type of channel or whatever. But for the most part, they're coming to see something particular. And you want to be able to not just give them that, but also to give yourself like make something that you're proud of, that you want to make as much as possible. You always got to make concessions like everything else. If you're going to make it your job or even just something you put a lot into and do very often, you're going to have to do some stuff you don't want to do. Editing, whatever. But it's, they say like authenticity is the most important thing. People want to like can tell instantly if you're faking it or, if you're just making something for clicks. And that's actually easier than you'd think. To just be you. People really like it, actually, when you're the most yourself. So the hardest part, I think, is picking the thing. You're like, okay, I'm a musician. Okay, well, but what are you going to do with that? I see a lot of people complaining about like, oh, I'm an artist. I wasn't put on this earth to make content. Well, content is just pointing the camera at the art that you make. If you're an artist, it's just pointing a camera at whatever it is that you do. That's the content part. Like, no, if you're a painter, your art is the painting. The content is a time lapse of you painting the painting so that people get a bit of insight into how you made it. And that's also interesting. You could argue that that is also a piece of art, but even if it's just content, then so is an art gallery is the content part. It's the presentation of whatever it is that you do. You don't have to go and do silly dances and lip syncs on TikTok. That doesn't have to be the content that you make. So that's my advice if YouTube is what you want to do. Like, it's okay to be narrow. And I don't really like the word niche because that implies that there aren't a lot of people that will like what you do, even if it's not typical. And actually, it's sort of the opposite. You want to think of, instead of niche, it's unique. Uniche? Did I just make up a word? Somebody write that down. Uniche. It's a U. Uniche. It's a yeah, keep playing. Give me some inspirational. You are your niche. You niche?
Unique.
There's nothing more unique than a you niche.
Unique.
Put yourself in that you niche. Let them come to you. Niche. And it's actually about the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche.
Beautiful. Oh man,
it's a Nietzsche niche. So anyway,
I feel like we could maybe just like scrap the rest of the conversation, just go like deep into this.
That actually, this is kind of a little meta example though, because a lot of people think that they're going to strike gold at the surface. Highly unlikely. Same with songwriting. Okay, if you write one song and it sucks, all you've done is step 0.01. Like, if you got it right the first time and you wrote the all-time banger and you want to go out batting 1,000, great. I can't say that it's never happened, but the likelihood is so very, very small. And also, who cares? Like, write 100 songs and you'll have some that maybe are pretty good. And then maybe you'll get one or two that are out of this world. And then you still have to write 100 more. Same with anything that you do. You know, a lot of people, you see these stats like X YouTuber that now has 100 million subscribers. Like, they were under 1,000 subscribers for their first 100 videos or whatever. And it's like that with music too. The quality of what you do is gonna improve as you go. But you'll also hit those magic moments where you come up with new words like "you niche." Like, think about any artist that you like. Think about an artist that you like. Do you like them because they're like someone else? Like, do you like their music because it's the same as a different one? With some exceptions, that actually can be true. But like, for example, I like Owl City because the Postal Service only put out one album. But generally, right, you like things because that's the only place you can get that thing, whatever it is, even if it's kind of similar to something else. So there's something that you do that nobody else does, and triple down on that. Get better at it, refine it, sharpen it to a razor thin point, and poke it into people's brains.
Uniche is good. It's a good word.
Boom.
Be uniche. But like spelled like you, like the word you. Be uniche.
Uniche.
How many layers does this have?
At a certain point, it's just a dumb pun. But I have seen ones in the same vein.
I feel like there's an onion that like there's got to be at least like 10 more layers of this dumb pun I'll get to, but like an ogre.
Layers like an ogre.
I don't know why what came to my mind was the answer to the question of what's like the ultimate meaning of life, and the answer is 42. This is great, man. I mean, there's a lot of really good stuff to unpack there, and it sounds like really like the main point that you really want to drill down on is just that, you know, in order for you to build, you know, a brand that gains, you know, traction and that really resonates, that generally you need to have consistency. You need to be willing to keep showing up, and, you know, to be unique, you know, to be yourself, but also to get specific too, like to have a channel that there's something special about it. There's something that isn't the exact same as everything else. Because if that's the exact same as everything else, then people would just go there, and like there's just nothing that really kind of stands out about it. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, and it's interesting too, like hearing your story and how, you know, in hindsight, if you knew what you know now, going back, there are a lot of things that you do differently. You kind of like stumbled your way through consistency and kind of discovering who you are, and eventually like kind of finding that thing that really worked for you. But I'm wondering, you know, for someone that might be watching this, listening to this right now, who, you know, they are an artist and they feel like they're floating around in the ocean a little bit, and they're trying to figure out like, what is that thing that makes me unique? Like I feel like I'm just the same as every other musician. I don't even know like what is it that can kind of set me apart. Do you have any recommendations or ideas or exercises or ways that someone could kind of get that self-awareness, or do you just recommend they just like do stuff and see what feels good?
Well, all art and creation of any kind is trial and error, no matter what. Sometimes, if you are too academic about what you're doing, as I have been at times, you think that you can learn your way into being good at something. that's kind of impossible. I think you need to learn, of course, and learning broader concepts, anything from music theory to just song structure things, all that stuff is incredibly helpful and incredibly important. But if you're not applying it all the time and trying stuff out and seeing how it works for you, it's completely worthless. You can't just think a song into existence or whatever. Is it Kingdom of the Crystal Skull where Indiana Jones slides into the library on a motorcycle and tells the kid, like, you want to be a great, what is Indiana Jones? He's a
explorer.
Yeah, but what's it called when you dig up old things?
Good question. It's not scavenger. Archaeologist.
You want to be a great archaeologist, you got to get out of the library. And that's also true of music or art of any kind. There's a balance, right? So to find what you are, you have to try a bunch of different things and not just stuff that's already out there. You don't have to just go like, oh, am I into salsa music? Is that my jam? And then you just try playing salsa for a week and see if it sticks. You can do that. That's exploratory, awesome. Do that kind of thing. I love doing that. But you also have to, at a certain point, once you've reached a certain level of competency, basic musical competency, you have to try stuff that no one's ever done. I think as a creative person, I think even the most bare bones definition of creativity is that we're adding to what already exists. Okay. If you write a song, you are putting notes, words, rhythms into an order and combination that has never existed before. Every single song, every one of the 50,000 songs that gets uploaded every day to streaming services, whatever, every single one of those is a completely unique fingerprint identity that hasn't existed before. If it's not, then it's a cover. So you're going to have that instinct and drive to create something new. Otherwise, you're not a creative. You're not an artist. That's what drives me day in and day out. I wake up, I start working on music or something like this wild setup of music creation things, and I just try to make something that didn't exist before until I can't stay awake any longer. And it gets worse over time. It's a long, dark rabbit hole of being a creative artist, anything. But that drive has to be there. And you will look at what exists and you'll go like, I can do that better. Like I can take this and add to it somehow. Like I can see what's missing and I'm going to add to it. Or to completely create something 100% new from scratch. I mean, sort of. Unless you're going to invent new instruments, a new way of dividing the frequency spectrum into, X number of new notes that have never been used. Like, you're probably not going to make something completely new, but more or less.
You can play the same 4 chords, but it's how you play them.
But it's how you play them. On what instrument? Oh, man. The last video I put up is ruffling some feathers because I make the claim that metal is not a musical style. And I did that for a sort of the same reason that we're talking about right now, which is that if you think of things as being prescriptive, things like style, genre, whatever, as being prescriptive, like you have to do them a certain way or it has no value, then you probably won't actually make anything groundbreaking and new. Then you're more or less just a glorified tribute band or artists. So to find who you are, you have to actuate it. It's going to be trial and error. Luckily, as I mentioned in my songwriting course, in the section about writer's block, if you make something that sucks, that's fine. It's great. you still have to make the thing that sucks. It never has to leave the folder on your desktop. Nobody has to ever hear it but you. But you have to make a bunch of garbage, probably. I mean, you don't want to think at the time that it's garbage. It might only be in retrospect, but you have to be constantly throwing things against the wall. You got to try all kinds of crap. I do a stream every Tuesday where we roll dice to write songs. Okay. So it's very rarely like what I would say I want to write. Like, I'm not like, I don't wake up in the morning inspired to write, whatever tempo and style I roll for. And we also roll for topics that are user submitted. And a few weeks ago, topic was just fucking dragons, man. And like the way that it was phrased was supposed to be like just like, it's about fucking dragons, man. Like, like dragons and shit. But I chose to interpret it literally, and I wrote a banger about owning dragons, like about somebody who wants to own a dragon, like Donkey from Shrek. Like, that's not going to become my whole persona, but like that was a great example of like having almost like a tracer bullet. Ever see like how a tracer bullet works? They're illegal, so you probably haven't seen them in real life, but see them on TV. Like, you shoot and there's this trail of white phosphorus, so you can see not just when you missed, but you can see how far off the target you were.
Huh.
So writing a song that's maybe not 100% what you want is like a tracer round, because then you see like, oh, that is exactly this far off of what I want to actually do, right? So don't be afraid to try a bunch of stuff. Think about your life and who you are and where you're from and what it is that actually makes you who you are, that is not the same as people around you. I think most artists feel disconnected from their surroundings, where they grew up, where they're, the people around them in some way. And that's because there are things that make us different from everyone else. Like, I think that creatives and artists are always, to some degree, societal outcasts, because if we weren't, we wouldn't feel the need to improve everything all the time. Like, that's what we're actually doing. We're looking at the world and seeing what needs fixing. And those differences are what people actually love in the art, and what they consume. So it could be anything. If we think of as a baseline idea that we're all working with more or less 12 notes and, 4 beats plus or minus a bit, there's like kind of a limited amount of musical things you can do. I mean, music is hard to make, but it's not that complicated. You make a lot of choices with the availability of those things, but all the other, excuse me, sir, you're fine. All the other things around the artistic profile, the lyrical content, visuals, the way that you play the music, all of that stuff is really what makes it. And those are the things that you can finely hone and craft to be the most you that it could be. And like finding your identity is a lifelong journey. Like, I'm 40 and I still don't really know musically. Like, I have a lot of things that I think that I do that are unique, but the format in which I want to do it is always changing. This outrageous setup that that you can only kind of see, that includes this pink guitar back here. I've spent the last year building a live looping EDM setup so that I can do more or less improvised on the spot, full EDM arrangements with a MIDI guitar and play synthesizers with my MIDI guitar pickup. And 2 years ago, if you'd have told me that's what I was doing, I would have been like, yeah, okay, bro. So yeah, just stick your hands into the clay without a thought of what you're going to make, and you will eventually become yourself.
Shit, man. Some really, really good stuff in there. Yeah. So to recap, what I'm hearing you say is that, there's not really a way to shortcut or to get over the fact that like you actually need to bite into the apple to know like what it's going to taste like. You can theorize about it, you can talk about it, and sometimes that's interesting, but like ultimately, like you at some point you have to actuate it. As an interesting word, I don't hear that said very often, but I love that word, actuate it into existence, and that you discovering who you are is a process of throwing yourself into the fire, putting your hands into the clay, and seeing what sticks, what resonates with you. And it's through that process of trial and error that you ultimately find what it is that makes you unique.
I love that I invented a word, pulled it completely out of my ass, and now we're like, how long until Webster's picks it up? Today's the 5th of December, 2024. I give it a year until we're in Webs. Okay, 3 months until we're on Urban Dictionary, a year to Webster's. Let's go.
I'm thinking tomorrow. Tomorrow you're going to be driving down to Disneyland, turn on the radio. You niche. You niche now.
You niche New York.
Motherfucking dragon mother.
I mean, it's a great example of why you got to just jump in. There's a certain amount of intention, actually a lot of intention that you have to use, you have to have when you create, but you can't premeditate all of it or even most of it. When I sit down to write a song, I think if I think about what I want it to be, it's not going to come out the way that it should, There's a lot of impulsivity in creativity, and you see the connections much more readily when you're in it. And there's a huge disconnect between a sort of premeditation, an intellectualization, or an idea of what you want, and the execution. Because so often I have had this idea of how something was going to be, and I was sure. And then I sat down to try to do it, and it absolutely did not work. And it certainly didn't work the way that I wanted it to. Actually, here's a great example. The song Mary on a Cross by Ghost and Buddy Holly by Weezer have a lot in common. They sound very similar in a lot of ways. And when Mary on a Cross was like blowing up on TikTok, and actually Buddy Holly also has it's a little micro viral spot where people will work that lick into it. And I was like, I am going to make the most viral video of all time combining these two songs. And I shit you not, I spent a week trying to make a mashup of the two. I probably way overcomplicated it, but long story short, I couldn't do it. I was like, I probably got in my own head about it or whatever, but it seemed like it was going to be so easy. Ooh, I look just like Buddy Holly. Oh, and you're Mary on a Cross. Like there's so many crossover potential moments, and I could not work them together into one song, and I failed. So that's an example of even what should be a really easy, simple mashup, couldn't get it done. But in my head, it worked so well. So I think if you have an idea and you have like a sort of intellectual understanding of a thing, an academic view, you should immediately get your hands into it and see if it works. If you're not doing that, the learning part is actually worthless. You might get some sort of like, I don't know, like an intellectual high off of knowing a thing. But if it doesn't have a functional purpose, then it's dumb. So like, for example, in my songwriting course, I talk about a lot of these kinds of ideas, but the majority of it is me actually writing a song and talking about it as I'm doing it, right? I'm demonstrating the thing that I'm talking about and talking about the thing that I'm demonstrating and showing how it's like what ideas are useful and what ones aren't, because we learn a lot of stuff so that we can be complete human beings, right? Like I don't use long division every day, but if I didn't know that long division existed and how to divide things and the concept, I would be very limited in my thinking. Same with like, history or whatever. Like I'm not thinking about like a Abe Lincoln famous speech, which the Gettysburg Address. Is that right? Right? On the daily. But nonetheless, like the knowledge of that informs certain ways that I think and act, even if I don't know it consciously. And that's the same with music stuff. But try recklessly. Like when you're writing, when you're practicing, try things with absolute reckless abandon, even if the chances of it sounding bad are like 85 to 90% or even 100, right? Like a lot of people won't try things because they don't like to fail. Failure isn't just a guarantee. It is the vast majority of what I do. I would say more often than not, I'm failing when I'm making something, and you probably will too, and that's fine. The world doesn't have to see the duds or hear them, but you have to make them, and you have to not care, because every artist that you look up to, all of your favorite musicians, also fail daily, struggle with things that you think they're masters of. I say this in my course too. Like Paul McCartney probably has 5,000 little song ideas on his phone in his voice recorder, and 4,900 of them are stupid as shit, and they'll never see the light of day. Okay, like greatest
songwriter. New one that he
time.
Didn't write about having sex with a dragon,
right? And he, of course, that's the one that he missed out on. He doesn't know that's true. Hey, you need
motherfucking dragon,
please. Like whatever. I think people want these like guarantees or something, but like you can't know without like you can't know what you don't know. Right? All music and art making is exploration. So fucking explore.
So good, man. It reminds me of that quote, man plans and God laughs.
Yeah.
And it sounds like what you're saying is that really, like, you have to try, you have to put yourself out there, and you have to be willing to suck, to suck and embrace it and go for it until, like, you have a few of those things that don't suck. And so, Trey, man, it's been great connecting with you today, and we've definitely ventured in some territory that I don't go down very, very often. So it's been a lot of fun, and I know that you created some really amazing resources, both in the form of your channel where you provide tons of amazing content, and also you've referenced you have a course for songwriting as well. So I'd love to hear for anyone that's here right now that's interested in exploring more, whether that's the YouTube or maybe you could share more about the course as well. What would be the best place for them to go to dive deeper?
So I actually have a few courses. The website is howsongsaremade.com. I've got
a good domain.
Yeah, not bad. And I snatched that right up. I have my like sort of big course, which is called Complete Rock and Metal Songwriting. And it is sort of rock and metal focused, but actually could be applicable to more or less any style. It's mostly about like core songwriting fundamentals. And, I cover more or less all parts of creating a song. Everything from like, writing guitar parts, programming drums, writing lyrics, melodies, harmonies, keyboard parts, bass, etc. And it's 15 hours long, and it's pretty thorough. And of course, you get to watch me write a whole song's soup to nuts. Then I have How to Actually Write Lyrics is my lyrics course, focusing entirely on writing lyrics, a bit of philosophy, but for the most part, it's just techniques for how you can actually write lyrics better right now, like a bunch of just tricks and stuff to get yourself going, to get your hands in the clay, as I said, right away, and like improve your lyric writing by tomorrow. And then I have another one that's a little bit me niche, which is called making symphonic metal with free VSTs, and it's just about it's exactly that. I show you how to take all the free plugins that are out there for orchestral sample libraries and how to turn them into like Dimmu Borgir and Septic Flesh style symphonic metal bangers. Here I sort of shot myself in the foot in this interview talking about how like being academic and learning stuff only will get you so far. And I think that's definitely true. But what I think most people find is that they get to a certain point trying stuff and then they need a little bit of insights and how to do something that maybe their favorite artist does. And they want to know how they can do that. They want to peek behind the curtain under the hood and figure out how it's done so that they can do not just that, but then the next thing, build on that as well. So that's why I made those resources to help people just get better at writing songs so that they can write things not just that are quote unquote better. Better is it's very subjective, whatever. I want you to be able to write what you want to write without having to like really, really struggle. So howsongsaremade.com.
Awesome.
Thank you.
It was good stuff. I mean, that's what we're here for. I appreciate it. And, to the point that you had brought up around, sort of the value of like, biting into the apple and the value of also like courses and training education. It reminds me of, there's this concept of the map and the territory. And I think the line is like, the map is not the territory. Mm-hmm. But I feel like it relates well to what you're talking about right there, which is that, having a course or having the education or knowledge is sort of like having a map that goes on top of the territory. And the territory itself is actually like, the land. And at a certain point, like, doesn't matter how much you read the map, like you got to like set foot, you got to like actually go do the thing. But, having a map can certainly help you save a lot of time and energy and kind of know where you're trying to get to. And you can learn from other people who've charted the territory before. And you have to be willing to kind of take that own step yourself so you can kind of actually explore and go deeper down it. So I'm very grateful to you for being here, for being able to share a little bit of your map and the territory, and definitely would encourage folks who resonated, who want to dive deeper, go check out the course and the materials. We'll link everything in the show notes. And Trey, thank you again for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a great time.
Absolutely. Yeah.